Hello. How's everybody? Thank you guys for coming. I'm a little bit nervous, so you guys will have to... I'm not used to being in front of so many people. It's just one person at a time. Okay. So, thank you guys for coming to the Strand. You know, I found that through the blog and through sharing, the things that always seem to work best for me is when I share something that's very selfish, when it's something that really interests me, and that I'm not so unusual that usually will interest other people. And several years ago, I was here, it's after I had started the Sartorialist and after I had started shooting, and I was downstairs on the second floor looking through photography books, which people that really know me know that if they can't find me, they know that's probably where I am. Because I also live here very close. So there's almost always a moment, not every day, but almost every day, where I'm trying to hide the bag of books that I've just brought home. But I was downstairs on the second floor, and I was flipping through the books, and I came across Amy's book, On the Street, and started flipping through it, and it was one of those kind of epiphany moments for me, because until this point, you know, street photography had been photography that was almost very much a report. It was very reportage of what was happening on the street. It was somebody kind of put up against a wall, and very much a focus on what they were wearing, and the quality of the photograph itself didn't mean as much. You didn't feel the person in the clothes. And one of the things I always wanted to do is make the photograph a portrait, but a portrait that, you know, is informed with the clothing, where the clothing, the background, everything else was a very important part of it. And when I looked at Amy's book for the first time, it was the first time where I really saw photographs that made me feel like this is how I want people to think about my photographs, 10 years, 100 years from now, because I was looking at her photographs and I felt like, even though this was shot, on Columbus Avenue in 1984, I felt like I knew this person, and if I didn't know them, I wanted to know them. And it was a real portrait. And, for me at that time, it was a very odd time because everything was kind of exploding, and I didn't know if I wanted to shoot more editorial, if I wanted to shoot on the street, if I was doing the right thing. There was no guidebook. I had taught myself photography, and everything fell on me so quickly that I was really at one of those moments where I didn't know what direction I wanted to go. I was getting calls from Paris Vogue or Italian Vogue, and I thought, should I be doing that, or should I stay shooting on the street? And looking at Amy's book, it was really that epiphany moment when I thought, this is what I want to do. This is how I look at fashion. It's how I understand fashion. It's how I understand street culture. It's really what I want to do. And flipping through those pictures, that time period came to me, and it really, it was something that always stuck with me. It was always a reference point when I would be down, or when I thought, oh, this is getting so tough, or how do I keep doing this every day? I'd grab that book. Jenny knows that I always keep that book somewhere very close to me, so I can just pick it up and flip through, and not looking at anything other than just feeling how I feel when I look at that book. So thank you. I can't wait to kind of share and introduce Amy's work to you. For some of you, probably already know it. Some of you, it might be the first. I'm very happy to think that a lot of people think that I was one of the first to do street style, but I think I was just one of the first to do street style in this new kind of digital age. Amy started shooting for the Village Voice in New York from 1980 to 1990, and I will start with a little clicker here to give you an idea of some of the work that she did, some of my favorite photographs, and some of these are in the book, and some of these are not in the book, and so my guess is they probably haven't been seen for a long, 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 long time. Maybe I'm holding it backwards. Anywhere particular I should shoot this thing? Anybody? This thing on? Oh, it's the air conditioner thing. That's what it is. I've got to be doing this right? There we go. Applause for that. I'm not doing so well if that gets applause.
Can you dim down the light?
Can we do? Yeah. I don't know. Does this thing? This, I think, was shot in Washington Square Park. Again, to me, it's such a beautiful portrait. The fashion is an element, but it's such a beautiful portrait. That actually, I should have asked her that question. She was out. When she comes out, maybe I'll ask her the question. I hadn't thought of this, but did he just offer to show his boxer shorts, or did you ask? Okay. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome Amy Arbus.
Hi there.
Wow, we're really up here, right? You guys can see us?
In these
I feel like
fabulous
Santa.
Chairs. I'm delighted to be here, and I have to tell you, when we met for the first time, he didn't gush like that. So it's really it's very sweet.
I was shy. I was intimidated.
Oh,
I didn't know what to say.
you're not usually shy, I bet.
I'm by myself most of the time. Nobody knows.
So here's the cool thing. We were sitting down the street having coffee, and a woman came up to us and knew us both. And I thought, how perfect is that? She's had the experience of being... Actually, I didn't photograph her. I did a portfolio review for her. And Scott met her when she was a man. So it was kind of very different experiences.
Is Maria Jose here tonight?
Oh.
I don't see.
Oh, we were hoping so
Yeah.
much. Is there
It was
anyone here that was photographed by the two of us? Yeah?
Cool.
Excellent. So we want to hear from you about what's the difference? What's the difference in our style? Because we have no idea. We know the results, but not the being there.
So, it was actually kind of funny when Maria Jose came up to us, because I had shot him when he was a he. You shot him now that she is a she. And it was only not that far a time difference between the two, right?
Maybe 6 months?
Yeah. And so I kept mistakenly calling him because that's just how I know him. And I just it was really one of the first kind of learning experiences when you're dealing with someone. And I was like, it took a while to get used to that. But anyway, so first question. I've been working hard on my questions, but tell us. I'm the one answering the questions, so it's not so hard being in front of the camera, but being the one asking the questions is more difficult. But, so tell me and the audience, how did this project start with the Village Voice?
I had been living in Boston, going to college, and I found this woman that I just thought was incredible. And she worked in my favorite clothing store, and she had this look that changed. She was very androgynous, and she could look completely different every time I saw her. And I finally asked to photograph her, and we worked together for 6 months. And I was completely intrigued by how clothes change the way you feel about yourself. So I came to New York and worked for a photographer for 2 years, and on my lunch break I went to the Village Voice for an interview. And eventually they offered me an internship, meaning I didn't make any money for 3 months, and I was kind of panic-stricken, but it actually helped to figure out what I was going to do.
But what, did they just ask you, do you want to start having a column? Did you bring it up to them? Did they bring it up to you?
Well, I showed them a portfolio of this one woman. And they said, do you want to do street fashion? And I said, sure, not even knowing really what that was. And when I started doing it, I was doing more, like you say, reporting on, here is this woman on a bus. It wasn't really portraiture. But after a few months, I sort of got in the groove of what I was interested in and what I could do technically to point that out.
Was that important to you, the way that you portrayed the people that you saw?
Yeah, I wanted a consistent look. I didn't want every picture to feel like it was made by a different person. So I wanted the lighting to be similar. My biggest problem was that the Village Voice had such lousy reproduction that I was photographing half the time dark people wearing dark clothing in, top lighting. So it wasn't ideal. So that's when I adopted the flash fill technique, which made the light on the person match with the light in the background. And the effect that it had, which I did not predict, was that the person looked like a cutout. They were flat and the background was dimensional.
And so that was something that you wanted it was almost your stamp, your trademark way of shooting for that project.
We do a similar thing in that the pictures are nothing alike, but I love your lack of depth of field. And when I did it, it was much less. It was just, here's the background. You can still see it, but it's a little bit out of focus to make the person stand out. And I did it because my eyesight is like that. I see really good. Well, now I need glasses, but I see really good close up. Far away, not so much. So I just mirrored my eyesight because things look good that way.
And so you were shooting everything with flash, for the most part?
Not always, but on a cloudy day, mostly I had to because I didn't want them, I had to, even on a sunny day, because I didn't want them in direct sun. I teach and I tell my students I hate that light. I hate dappled light. I hate direct sun. It's got to be really early or really late to look good in direct sun.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because you're right. Your pictures are so consistent. Where for me, I just kind of made it as I went up, and I felt when I was out shooting that in a real street photography, you control so little that I love the challenge of, okay, I'm in this situation, here's the subject, and I've only got a couple of minutes where I've got them where I can really get the picture and not lose their interest. So for me, it's very fast. Like, do I backlight them? Do I front light? Do I put them in dappled light? Something I really love now is reflected light. Find if it's the right time of the day and the light's bouncing off a glass building across the way, to have that moment. Like when I shoot editorial, it's not nearly as fun because you got so many people around, how they want the shot. It's not nearly as much fun as having to, in that snap moment, figure out what you want to do. Do you have a particular way that when you started doing this, that you approached the people that you shoot? Did you find certain methods worked better than others?
What you see is what you get. I only, I can't make shit up. I just approach people in a completely genuine way because I don't know any other way. And I just tell them why I'm interested and what it's for. And people would say no because when I first started, there were the glamour
don'ts.
The glamour don'ts.
Do you guys remember the glamour don'ts? Most of you are probably too young for that. I used to get that in the beginning. Is this a glamour don't? No. Why would I do that?
No, I was all about why would I want to photograph something that I didn't want to look at later, because that's the whole point. Once you photograph someone, you have to look at it later. And hopefully you want to look at it later.
That's what I always thought. Is this something I'm going to want to look at? And it's something I would want to put my name on. Yeah. Something I would want to represent my work. So
when people would say no to me, I would think I would be crushed at first, totally crushed. take it personally, the whole bit. Then I decided I really got to work this out, because if I'm crushed every time someone says no, I'm I'm really in trouble. So I decided, well, it's really like saying, do you want to play a game? And if somebody says no, then they wouldn't be any fun anyway. So I don't care, whatever.
I always say quietly under my breath, okay, you won't be in the third book.
Yeah. Here's what
I'm a little passive-aggressive that way.
Here's what I want to say about you and ask you is, you've done this thing that I don't think was an option way back when I started this, which was to make this a phenomenon and to make a commercial career out of this. And I think that is really fantastic and admirable and amazing, kind of, because it was like I was really proud to have this job, but I mean, it was terrible money and not a lot of glory. The most glory I had was walking down the street and people would say, oh my God, you photographed my friend, and where have you been? I've been hoping to run into you, and oh my God, I'm wearing my worst outfit today. But that was it. The glory at the newspaper, they let me help with the design of the pages, and that was a real honor, because magazines, newspapers, they don't let photographers do anything except take the pictures.
Did you carry a little portfolio with you? I've heard a lot of photographers say, especially when they were shooting in the 50s or 60s or 70s, they carried a little portfolio so they could show the person what they were doing. You never felt the need to do that?
I should have. I mean, now I have my
phone. Now someone tells you.
Yeah. No, and I've actually recommended it to students, but at the time, I don't know. It didn't occur to me.
But it's a big thing to carry around. You already got to carry around a camera, a flash. To carry around a book, I like to carry around as little as possible.
Right.
I wouldn't want to carry around it's a little easier for me. I can show people on the phone, but it's not so.
P.S. I can't figure out to this day how you can do it on a bicycle.
I'm crazy. I'm loco. Yeah. I found, that's why I was curious how you approach people, because not that I want to give away my secrets to anyone that wants to steal my job, but I have found, as a New Yorker, you guys are New Yorkers, if you're walking on the sidewalk and you see those people from Greenpeace or anyone wanting to hand something out or get you to sign something, you real fast grab your phone. It might not even be the right direction. You're like, no, sorry, I'm on the phone. I can't do it. No. If they see you, if you see them, you have a chance to build your defense, right? And so I learned after a while it was always better to come up from the side or from the back. Even if I saw them, I could kind of place myself. First of all, if I see them from the side, I want to kind of run over and kind of get a look from the front, get the overall idea, and then follow them a little. I know it sounds very stalkery, but that's what I got to do.
Little stalkery.
Welcome to my life. And so usually I see them, and then I kind of walk with them a little bit behind before I say anything, so I can kind of see where they're going, and then think, all right, I'm going to stop them when they're close to the spot where I think I want to shoot them, so I can shoot them really fast, right? But I've learned the weirdest thing is if I have my camera strapped across me, that's how I usually have it when I'm on the bike or walking, because I'm out for 5 or 6 hours. If I've still got the camera strapped across me, they almost always say no.
Takes too long.
I think mentally they think it takes too long. I mean, look, I've got the camera off. It didn't take that long. But mentally they almost always say no, so I have to have my camera. If I see them, I start taking the camera off, rolling it up, getting it ready. And then as this has gone on, you probably get the sense, or anyone that's been out shooting, whether it's street style or any kind of street photography, you get a sense of what's happening on the street. You just get a sense there's an energy that day. And so I could be in an area and just be like, there's nothing here. And so I started riding my bike, because I could get from one area to the next. And every once in a while, today, against my better judgment, I took a shot while I was on the bike moving. I mean, I've got kids, so the last thing I need is to have any kind of accident on the bike. I would feel really stupid if I did. But it's usually done out of the emotion. You know, it's a question a lot of people ask me. Were you ever shy and nervous? Did it take you a while to kind of get the nerve and the courage to walk up to a stranger? So many people, when they email me, how do you do this? I can't walk up to people on the street. Did that bother you?
Yeah, it did. But that's one of the main reasons people come to study with me, is because they don't get it. And I actually feel like I'm shy if I'm just walking around without a camera. With a camera, I have a reason.
Right.
So that's like, I mean, my mother called it a license, you know.
Yeah.
And it does sort of validate. And I think if you have your camera this way, it's like, oh, it's another tourist. But if you
I look
have
like
it
a
in
German tourist.
But if you have it in your hand, you're working. And that, I think, is the difference. So yeah, I suffered from terrible shyness. I was terribly shy as a kid. But all of a sudden, the camera gave me a reason to start talking to people, and I was thrilled. I could talk to anybody. And now I can talk to anybody about photographing them another time. You know, so I'm not shy.
You know what I found? Because you wear glasses all the time now?
I have to.
Yeah. I have to wear glasses, but I found after a while, because I don't love the idea. We'll talk about this later, but I think you're a people person. I'm not such a people person. I don't know why, but I'm just not such a people person. And so it was hard for me to go up and talk to someone, but the excitement I was more excited about getting the picture than embarrassed of going up and talking to them. So that was one thing. But then the other thing I realized, if I didn't wear my glasses, there was this kind of film, a kind of haziness between me and the person that made me just comfortable enough that I could deal with talking to them. Isn't that weird? Now, it doesn't work very well when you're trying to see if your pictures are focused, so I had to put them on real quick, or just kind of look at them like that. But just little things like that. After a while, I realized, and I wasn't doing it consciously, subconsciously, I realized, like, oh, this is a really good trick. I mean, I know you guys are all here. I can see there's people there, but I don't know what you look like. It's such a great trick. Well, you're really cute.
I didn't wear glasses back then, so it wasn't an issue.
Really?
Yeah. It was
there any really embarrassing moment when you asked somebody and you were like, oh, this isn't going well? Have you ever asked someone that you looked at as soon as well, I don't know, maybe you don't come up from the side or the back, but I come up from the side or the back and someone will turn around, I'm like, oh, wow, they're crazy. And I thought they had good style. They're just actually really certifiably crazy.
No,
back away slowly. What did I get myself into?
No, I do the crazy check before I approach people because, oh my God. Maybe because I'm a girl. You know, the crazy thing,
It's
no
tough.
can
It's
do.
really a deal, right? It's
Yeah.
really an issue. Do I want to get into a conversation with this person?
Because they will never leave you alone.
No. Welcome to our life. There you go. You're getting the real deal. That's the real deal. It's just two photographers talking. So tell me, at that point, what was everybody's heard about the 1980s in New York. What was the scene like? What was New York like? In your photographs, it makes it look like everybody was like such a statement. I mean, people talk now about everybody's having their 15 minutes and everyone wants to be famous and everyone wants to be known. But you look at these photographs, I mean, even that or that book I showed you right before we came out, I have another book by kind of a more anonymous photographer of shooting in New York in the mid-1984. But I mean, it was such a scene. Jenny kind of posed this question, was it as dramatic as what you see in the photographs, or was it still kind of hard to find those people, or were they just falling out of the window crazy with mohawks and crazy hair? And was the downtown scene really alive like that? It
was really alive, but also my editors were so knocked out by the outrageousness of what people were wearing that they kept saying, oh yeah, get even more outrageous. And I was like, whoa, cool, you know, I have enough pressure here.
Right.
I've got to, I came up with themes each month, and, you know, I had enough issues to worry about. And then all of a sudden they were like, ooh, I love the nose rings and the, you know. And I was like, okay. And the tattoos with the bra on the outside of the clothing. And I was like, oh my God, this is too, you know.
Was there any? Did you find that you had to end up shooting more at night or during the day to kind of get the more outrageousness? As it went on, did you shoot more during the day or during the night?
Much more during the day.
Really? I would have thought it would have been the night if you needed more outrageous things. Or
the night is easier in terms of outfits, but it's so intentional.
Yeah.
You know, people dressed to go out to a club, and I was really interested in people just, you know, going to work or, you know, going to school or going to a friend's house or whatever they were doing. In fact, when we started doing the captions, that's what the captions were about. You know, I love what you're wearing. Where are you going? You know, why are you dressed like this? And that's when when Madonna said, I'm still wearing my pajamas.
Right. We're going to show that. That's maybe. Do you think that's your most iconic shot from that series, from
Thank
that part?
God.
Yeah.
I have
thank
that
God.
picture. Oh my goodness.
She's not here tonight, no?
No.
Okay,
Where is she?
I
I've
didn't
never met her,
see
but
her. No.
but
Okay.
boy, that picture, I have to say I'm really grateful I took that. And it was the first, when I said I'm working for the Village Voice, she said,
Oh, wait.
sorry.
We got that picture coming up. Shh. Okay.
All right.
We're going to skip that. We're going to come back to that later. Okay. Don't give away your picture. Okay. Now, one thing that I've noticed, or I'm curious about, but it seems like even though the pictures were in the Village Voice, and you've said before that you kind of fell into a clique. And it seems like the people are being outrageous, but it seems like back then, even if it was in the Village Voice, the photographs were still in a very kind of cloistered group. It was a small group kind of performing for the rest of the group. Where now with the internet, you can take a picture in a small place and it goes out to the whole world. And there's no mystery and there's no this kind of security blanket of being around your people, that where it's more cloistered, more protected. Did you feel that people, even though they were being outrageous, felt that they could be more outrageous because it was still a little secret, like you know, the way that they were dressed, what they were doing was still going to stay pretty much in New York, that they weren't going to be ridiculed and these pictures go all out over the world?
Many years into working for The Voice, there was one letter to the editor that said, every time I open The Voice and see Amy Arbus's pictures, I know why I moved to Minnesota. So I was a little hurt for 1 second, and then I thought, that's too funny.
Okay, now I have to try and read this.
Can I help?
No,
Can I ask my own question?
No. Okay, so we did like a couple of meetings beforehand to talk and get a sense, because we really had never met until just a couple months ago when I asked you to do this. And we were talking about getting to know people and about shooting, and that you had done a film where you went back and found people, 20, 25, 30 years later?
25?
People that you had,
yeah.
25 people that you had found and wanted to see what had happened to them. And you said, I think you asked me something like, well, don't you like to find out, you know, about the people and stuff? And I said, no. I totally like the abstract idea. And you looked at me like I was crazy, like I had 3 heads, and I wonder, like, why do we end up shooting people? Like, it's very odd. Like, you and I have both ended up, I mean, you would say for the most part, you shoot people, right? I mean, not landscapes so much. You're known for shooting people. What is it about shooting people that draws you to that, not shooting landscapes, not shooting something else? What is it about shooting people?
I'm just endlessly fascinated by how challenging it is to be human, and how people handle that, and how they make it worthwhile, and how they express themselves. And when You know, there's that whole thing of the left brain, the right brain, you know, how one eye is bigger than the other, and one is the self you were born with, and the other is the self that you want to project to the world. And I just feel like people's expression, particularly in those days, was so on their skin. Rather, you know, like you could see into their personality through their clothes. And I don't think they do that as much now. I mean, tell me if they do.
I don't know. I mean, when I look at your photographs, I think it was much more... Now I think the internet, because it's so pervasive and pictures can be shared everywhere, I wonder if people don't hide a little bit. They're afraid. That's kind of, I mean, maybe I was asking in an awkward way, but I wonder if people don't hide a little bit because they're afraid to be ridiculed on a large basis, whether someone asks to take their photograph or whether their photograph is just taken and shared and it gets back to them. You know, because one thing that's different between the way we shoot is a lot of times I think, what is the reaction? It doesn't keep me from shooting, but a lot of times I think, oh, what's the reaction going to be of this photograph? Because, you know, I never want anyone to have their feelings hurt. I always want to shoot them in the best. I only shoot people I want to shoot and I think look interesting, and I shoot it in a very sincere way. But I know a lot of people don't really understand that, and it's something that's a little different in the way we shoot, where I really have to think, how is this going to be, what's the reaction going to be, and how are they going to feel?
Right.
And so like on the blog, I've always kept it very, they don't have to love it, but they just have to say it respectfully. And it's very, you know, when we were talking, I got on my bike and I left and I thought, why am I that way? You know, why is it that I don't have that same kind of thing? And, you know, when I was looking at photographs, the reason I think, like when I was looking at your photographs or when I look at Steve McCurry photographs, when I was teaching myself photography, you know, there was no chance of me ever meeting these people because they're either historical photographs from long ago or they're in India or Nepal or wherever they're from. And so they were always abstract people. You know, it was never a real person. And I think that's one of the reasons I always kind of shot towards the abstract instead of really trying to find out the realness of the person.
Well, there's this thing about photographs being iconic if they're not specific about the person. So somebody from behind or some, you know, a silhouette or a shadow or all those things can be enjoyed by absolutely everyone. And even in my own house, people will come in and say, oh, is that your grandmother or your daughter? Or, and to this day, they don't get that it's just a photograph
that you love.
Yeah, that I can relate to on some deep level.
Mm-hmm. How are we doing on time? What time is it? 7:45? Holy cripe. Okay, we gotta go fast. Damn. Okay, let me go. Okay, we're not gonna ask that question. Okay. Was there anything, like, maybe I asked you if there was anything shocking or taboo, right? Was there anything, like, at that time there wasn't so much cross-dressing on the streets of New York, was there?
Well, one picture I have is called The Lesbian Couple because it was unusual. And now, I mean, if they're not lesbians, it's unusual. You know what I mean? It's just really different.
We're all lesbians now.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it Wednesday? Okay.
Was that an answer to your question?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, so I have to ask you a question. It's one that we hadn't talked about beforehand. I haven't brought this up before. We haven't talked about it because I wanted to get your real reaction. But there's a photographer that you are kind of linked to, and who, as time has gone on, this photographer's notoriety has grown and grown and grown. And I'm just curious, back in the day, was Bill Cunningham just another guy on a bike shooting, or did anyone care about him? Because now everyone is so like, whoa, Bill Cunningham. Did you guys divide the city and like, Bill, you stay uptown, I'll stay downtown?
We didn't.
Billy, get out of the shot. Come on, move out of the way.
Well, he was on 57th Street, and I was in the Village. But we didn't speak until many, many years later, and I called him. used to see him at events all the time, but I didn't really, he was working. I didn't really want to interrupt. So I called him one day and he said, "Oh, I'm not a photographer." And I was like, I don't know about that. I mean...
What did he say he was? He was a milliner a long time ago.
He just takes pictures and he likes fashion. That's it. But now that there's this wonderful film about him, I thought you were going to ask me about genetically linked too.
I know, that was a good way, right? I asked that really good. Practice that. She asked, she goes, "Have you ever been asked that question before? About Bill Cunningham?"
I don't think so.
There you go. She said, "Oh yeah, I'm sure it's not a question I haven't been asked a million times." Is there something you would like to say about your mother? Did she have any kind of effect?
I'm not done with Bill yet.
Oh, okay, yeah, let's go back to Bill.
I think Bill is great. And that movie, if you have not seen it, is really so moving. And his devotion to photography is intense. It's just that he thinks of it as the snapshot aesthetic. So that's a whole different thing than us. Do I love his pictures? No, but did I follow them religiously? Yes, because I wanted to see, he saw things before I did often. So I was excited to see what was coming down the pike, as it were. Yeah.
Was there anyone else that maybe has slipped through the cracks because it's Bill, it's you, but before that, I can't really think of a name photographer. There was Lartigue that wasn't doing quite what you guys do, or August Sander, which again is very, very different, but someone that...
Sander's my guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he really wasn't shooting with fashion in mind when he was doing it. You can't...
No.
That was actually one of the other questions. We have to get like an extra half hour in here, because one of the questions I was going to ask you is now...
But you're free to go.
Yeah, you guys can go whenever. We're just chatting. Because like with August Sander is one of my major influences. Love the work. And potentially with yours and potentially with mine, I think there's a difference where August Sander didn't have quite the same thing, but both of ours, you had a contemporary reaction to the images, yours in the newspaper, mine on the internet, where a contemporary voice could look at it and they could see it and appreciate it for mainly the fashion elements. But as time goes on and nostalgia starts to creep in, a patina starts to creep into the images, it really even becomes more about the people, and it becomes like when I'm shooting, as I've been doing this more, I back up a little bit more because I want to have the person, I want to have the cars, I want to have the street furniture, I want to have that really kind of sets the context. I mean, how do you feel that your photographs are going to, the patina and that age is going to help your photographs? Do you think about it that way?
I do, yeah. My dad once said to me, "There's a manhole cover in every photograph." I grew up here. I was very sentimental about the village, and it was a very different place. I felt very differently about my home then than I do now. I felt very safe and like a real community. And I started photographing these folks because they were really cutting edge, and that was my only access to them. Here was the cool people crowd, and they all seemed to know each other, and they would all sort of recommend, "Oh, you should meet my friend so and so." And so it was really to get access to a time and a scene that would never exist again.
Did you feel that in the moment, like, I'm really capturing something special here?
Not to articulate it, but yes, I thought, this is so cool. I didn't think in 30 years it's going to be really cool. I just thought, this is unusual.
Yeah.
And part of it was because nobody had a cent to their name. That's what we found out when we did the documentary. None of us had any money, and it didn't matter. Well, now if you don't have money, it's a big issue. But these people were determined to succeed as a musician or a performance artist or a designer or a clothing designer, and they did.
Yeah.
They all did. I mean, whether they're big names or not, they did what they wanted to do, and there was no stopping them. And I think that's not possible now.
I don't know. I think it's possible.
It's possible?
Yeah.
Well, you did it.
Yeah, and I had no money. I'm telling you, it's true. I had to, you asked me how I did it? Fake it till you make it. I mean, nobody said, okay, Scott, you're the Sartorialist now, run with it. I made up the name, and then I just had to be that. I mean, luckily I had 15 years experience, so I had some idea of how I wanted to do it. But I think there's still, now with, startups and things, and that's one of the things I'm proud of with the shots, is that it is easy now to find young people with Prada or whatever, but there's still a really great group of people that are wearing vintage or wearing thrift store, or there's even more variety of styles now, and you get the sense that they're going to, some people really want to have a lot of money and have a big success, and some people want to live a very quiet, beautiful life, a small life. They want to have a coffee shop, they want to have whatever, they find the romance in that. But I wish there was more of that. I wish there was more of what you get this sense in the 80s, where people, it wasn't just about the money all the time. Okay, so we were supposed to be doing to this point about a half hour ago. Okay, so we're going to talk about your first photograph. So this is your most, wouldn't you say, your most iconic photograph?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell us what happened? This was on 9th Street?
St. Mark's and 2nd.
St. Mark's, okay.
And I've told this many times, but I recognized her as the woman who went to my gym, who hung out in the naked the longest. And I kept thinking, well, if I had a body
What gym was
like
that?
Yeah, exactly. No, if I had a body like that, I would too. I mean, I thought she looked amazing. And I mean, even more so than some of the stages she's been through when she's been really buff. I just thought she was a natural beauty.
Yeah, she looks so great here.
She looks so great, and it's effortless. And when I approached her, she said, "Oh, that's so weird that you work for The Voice. They're running a review of my first single this week."
So that was the week her first single ever came out. You shot her just before she was ready to break. Wow, that's pretty cool.
She gave me her last name.
Really?
Yeah.
And Madonna was her first name? I don't know. Is that her first real name? Is that what she uses?
Yeah.
Wow.
Scissione.
Yeah. I tried never to shoot stars because I'm always afraid that they're going to do something crazy that will make me look bad when I take their picture. Oh, yeah. That dude. Okay. Did you see who it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is another one of your photographs. You were telling me this was one of your favorite photographs, The Clash.
Well,
so how did this happen?
Well, this is just one of those, the photo gods are shining on you. I was walking down I used to live on the Upper West Side, and I was walking down Broadway to the Village. And I knew the Clash was in town because I had tickets to the show, and I was like, "Whoa, this is so cool! I can't believe they're just standing here." And then I realized they were standing there for a reason, which was to be in Martin Scorsese's King of Comedy. Well, I'm so thrilled that I took this picture because they're in King of Comedy for a millisecond. I mean, I'm sure there's cutting room floor, but I mean, you can barely, it's from the side and they're just leaning their heads out. And I didn't talk to them because they were sort of busy waiting to be busy. You know what I mean? I didn't feel like I could interrupt. And so for me, this kind of photograph is a very different thing for me. So
yeah, it's hard to do a multi like that where you have everybody in the right place. It reminded me of a shot I took in Florence when I was having lunch with a lot of my friends. We were doing this kind of lunch for 25, and I'd invite all these kind of cool guys that I knew. And at some point, about half the people at the lunch were gone. I was like, why are half the tables empty? Where's everybody? And it was all the Italians outside smoking. And I walked out, and I was like, oh my God, they could not be more perfectly lined up.
Love it.
And to get a multiple like that and have them all perfectly talking. You know, I was lucky enough that they knew me, so when they'd see me, probably Alessandro saw me, but the rest of them, they just kept moving. They had learned by that point, don't pay attention, just do our thing. But isn't that great when you have a moment, you just realize, for a single, it's a little bit easier than to have a multi like that and to have that many people and be like, oh my God, everyone's just in the right place. It's great. It's a great moment. So tell me about this. This was one of the photographs. We talked a little beforehand, and I said, tell me about some of the photographs that mean something to you, Amy. So what does this photograph mean to you?
I was just really proud of, it was probably a turning point for me when I walked into Suzanne Barsh's store, which had these amazing clothes, and this guy Julio was working for her, and I asked him if he would come out for a minute so I could take his picture, and I knew that I wanted to photograph him from behind because of what he was wearing. It was much more interesting from behind, and I loved that I was able to find an excuse for him to be photographed from the back. And also I love the shape echoing his shape. So I think it means so much to me because I was all of a sudden aware of what I was doing in a funny way. And sadly, he passed away shortly thereafter. So it's just it's a very touching thing to me. Mm-hmm. He looked so much like a child, and he was, 20-something. Yeah. So I don't know. It just moves me.
And then here's another great portrait, and it's hard. A lot of times people don't think of portraits from the back like that, and a lot of times it can tell you just as much, or at least what you want to share with the audience, as much as a direct, full frontal portrait.
Well, this is when I realized that photography is totally different than seeing someone. So I was exposing in those days we had to pick our exposures, I think it's a guy. I never spoke to the person. His knees, because I wanted it to read in the paper. And that made the outside, he was in the front car, the outside blow out so that you couldn't see anything. And to me, that's the poetic thing about the photograph. And
were you using a light meter, or you were just kind of guesstimating?
Well, the light meter in the camera. So I knew how to correct for that.
Yeah.
I used a reflected light reading on the backgrounds, and then I judged distance in the foreground if I was using flash.
You couldn't have just shot it with your phone?
What phone?
Okay. This was a photograph I took. This is probably my favorite photograph of yours. I love the Madonna one, but this one, for some reason, it's the photograph that when I was flipping through the book really stopped me. And to me, this was how are we doing on time? Okay, we got to wrap it up. Okay. But to me, this was, and I put this on Instagram the other day, to me, this is the idea of, there's such a cliche that, fashion is fleeting and style is forever, but in a really great fashion photograph where it's partly the person, partly the setting, partly the clothing, it can really make fashion last forever. I think you shot this on the Upper West Side, or on Columbus Avenue, I think it says, in 1984. Really? In the book, I thought it said Columbus Avenue.
I don't think so.
All right, where do you think you shot it?
Chelsea.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Because I was going to say, it seemed odd because I've never once taken a picture on the Upper West Side. So maybe it was Chelsea. But what do you think about the idea of fashion being fleeting? Because to me, I think a photograph like that is very, very fashion, but it's not fleeting at all. And it's not style. It's not a stylistic photograph. It's not a classic style photograph. It's fashion, but to me, it endures.
I don't understand your distinction.
I don't either. You know it when you see it. It's weird. I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, to me, that is not at all classic style as you would think of it. It's very fashion, and yet if I saw this girl walking down the street today, I wouldn't think she looked odd. I would think she looked great, and I would take her picture in a heartbeat. So, I don't know. They say it's like porn. You know it when you see it. You can't really say what it is. So, I don't know. Do you have a distinction between style and fashion? I guess everybody's is different.
style to me, I think it's very different the way you're using it. Style to me is something that is unique to a person. And fashion is...
Maybe I mean classic style.
Oh, okay.
More kind of classic style. But a lot of times they'll say style and classic style is the same idea. So like Audrey Hepburn is classic style. It'll never go out of fashion. It's always around.
Well, she's a filmmaker.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I think that's
So she
relevant.
definitely has a sense of fashion, sense of style and all that. Because it kind of, to me, my equivalent of a shot like that is this one, which again is very, I don't know why, there's and I think it's something about the sweetness of the girls in both shots, where to me it's very fashion, but I think it'll always look kind of cool. Here's another photograph, another one of my favorite photographs. I was here in New York when that gas station on Broadway and Houston was still there. And so when I looked at that photograph, it had been long gone by the time I had seen this book. And it was really cool. And it was one of the things that influenced me to think, I got to pull back a little bit because I want people to be able to connect with these photographs if they visited New York, or to be able to say, I remember when that was there. And it gives a context. But the thing I find very sweet about this photograph is the way she's holding her hands. It's very sweet. It reminds me of a photograph I took in Moscow. But was there anything that, when you were shooting, where you kind of choreographed or something that, to me, like a great hand position, to me really makes it more than a head position, more than a look, more than hair, a lot of times more even than clothing. I find hands very graceful. Is there anything for you that you're like, oh my God, okay, that was great?
Yeah. I think when I studied with Richard Avedon, which was in...
Name drop. That was pretty good name drop.
That he made me realize that gestures were really essential. So even headshots had to have hands in them somehow, because it's almost as personal as your face.
Don't you think? I think. And I don't even know how. The thing I love about street photography is I can't ever suggest something to them because they'll always do something better than what I could suggest.
That's it, though.
Isn't that the greatness of shooting people? That crazy variety?
But that's the whole point of suggesting. So
then they'll do something else?
Yeah.
I should do that more often then. So kind of along that debate, we talk about fashion that's kind of somehow enduring, and like to me this is a great idea of fashion that's very of the moment. Or this other photograph, this one I love, because that could, to me, read so, 1983, Chess King. If any of you guys remember Chess King, I don't know if you do. What was it? Tell me, this was at a festival or something?
There's no story there. Yeah, I knew that he was at some happening in Central Park. But we didn't talk long. He was just on his way. 2 frames maybe.
Really? Is that typical?
Madonna was 7.
From basically the same point, or do you really kind of move it around, try it this way, that way, or?
Depends on how willing they are to stop.
Yeah.
I used to pose people with the right background that wasn't too busy, wasn't too dark or light or distracting from them. Yeah. So if they were willing to do that, I would probably take more pictures.
Yeah.
But as you do it, you think, oh, that's what I'm interested in. It's the way her sweater falls, or something small but significant.
Yeah. I always start from the back forward. I stop when rarely is it the first couple of frames. It's usually almost always in the back, but I probably shoot 20. Or I just keep shooting until I think I got it, until they get mad and walk away. And then I'm like, oh, I meant to shoot that from the back. So I know we're almost against time, but do we have time for 2 questions? Okay. So we've got time for 2 questions. Does anybody have any questions? I guess I should have said, does anyone have any questions before I said 2? Okay, Mademoiselle right here. Do we have a microphone or something, or? You're like Phil Donahue. Or Phil Dunphy for young people.
Hi, I have a question for Amy. Yeah, so do you think your mother is a major influence for you?
Oh, that was the question I forgot to ask.
I think she's a major influence for all of us. Yeah, I think she really changed the way we look at the world and being human. And she was somebody early on in my career. Trying to work for magazines and newspapers, somebody said to me, "Well, you're not as good as your mother." And I was like, ugh. And it took me literally, I think, 3 years to get over that. And I woke up one morning and I said, wait a minute, nobody's as good as my mother. I think I can live with that.
That's the best answer. That really is the best
totally
answer.
True. I mean, I'm a little biased, but she changed the way we see.
Time for another question. We have one more over here. Good answer.
You mentioned it takes money to like be someone. I'm relatively young, so I'm curious. Why does it take money to be someone? When you're talking about the 80s.
No, I think she said that it didn't take money to be someone.
But why does it take money now? I'm curious.
I also said it didn't take so much money now.
Okay.
I think it really doesn't. I mean, I think now it's really brains. If you can be smart. I mean, look, I said no money when I started the blog and things worked well. For the right people, the smart people, they don't need a lot of money to dress great. I mean, it's one of the reasons, like for my photographs, I never ask what they're wearing. I might ask just out of my own curiosity, but I make it a complete non-issue on the blog. I rarely ask their names. You know, it's something about the dream. I love when I find someone who I think is wearing Prada and it's Zara, you know, or I love, you know, finding people that are dressing secondhand, or, you know, Jenny has done a great job. I think she's really inspiring to a lot of people, mixing vintage things from Beacon's closet with one piece that she saves a lot of money to buy from Gucci. So I still think New York, there's something really great about something like that, where people can come here, and if they have the passion and the brains to be able to make it happen, they can figure out how to do it with no money. Any other one? We got one fast one before they throw us out. How about way in the back?
Oh boy. Okay, I'm almost there. Here you go.
Just going on the back of that, Scott, I don't know if you remember, you and I were talking about how technology has kind of democratized what professions people can be, especially with photographer, and like it was interesting hearing your opinions on that. If you just want to give some comments.
What? Say the question
about
again?
how technology has democratized photography.
What do you think? Now everybody has a phone. Basically, everybody has a camera now on them at all times.
Gosh.
Do you think that's made the art of photography stronger or weaker? Maybe that's what you were basically saying.
Yeah, I think the fact that everybody can do it is fabulous, but I think the people don't recognize a great photograph from a not so great photograph. So I think that's where we run into problems.
Yeah, but I do think the people that, because there are so many photographs out there, I do think the people who are able to capture emotion like you do with your photographs, or like what I try to do in mine, still will somehow bubble to the top. Because there's a lot of photographs, but there's not many strong images and things that are emotional. You know, there's a lot of reporting, but I don't think reporting has the same effect as something that's like emotional. That, like when I look at your photographs or Steve McCurry. But you know, it was really interesting. I asked Steve McCurry one time. I said, "Would you ever publish an iPhone photograph?" And he said, "Yeah, sure. If it was good and it had everything I needed and the focus was good and all that, of course I would." And I mean, you know, he's Mr. Kodak film and all of this kind of thing. And so I thought it was really brilliant to see someone that's so respected be like, you know, a great image is a great image. And maybe that's maybe what I was saying about the idea of democratization, that now with the news, you know, like someone could be anywhere, and if they're able to capture a great moment, even with their phone, even if it's grainy, even if it's whatever, if it captures that moment in time, that thing that was happening there, I think it could be really great. I think we're at a great time for photography now.
It's true.
Okay, is that it? Last one? Okay, well, I would like to thank everybody at the Strand for making this happen. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I would like to thank Amy. This was a big thrill for me.
And
this
for
was a
me.
very selfish thing for me to do, but I'm hopefully all you guys got to enjoy being in on a part of this. But thank you very much. I really appreciate
Pleasure.
it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Guys.